world, I'm getting all a hi-fi fever because I'm pretty close to getting my new cartridge for my record player. So I'm really excited. So I'm making hi-fi videos again, and today I want to have a little look at a system, a turntable system, but in particular concentrating on phono stages and how to match them to decent turntables. So here we go. Okay, we're going to have a look at the record players for a minute. Okay, so this is Rega's current range. Okay, the Planner 1, Planner 2, Planner 3, Planner 6. The RP6 is old now. The RP8, the RP10, and the RP78. Okay, so those are the current range of turntables, and the smaller the number, the lower grade the turntable is. Okay, so you've got the Planner 1 and the Planner 2. These are the cheaper turntables here. And when we're talking about a cartridge to match those, they come with Rega's carbon cartridge. Now, Rega's carbon cartridge is a branded Audio Technica, basically, a Rega branded Audio Technica. If we have a look at it, go to cartridges here. First of all, this is Rega's base, homemade, as it were, cartridge made by Rega themselves, the Bias 2. Technical specification. The stylus is elliptical, which is pretty common on cheap moving magnet cartridges and not entirely expensive. The Elise 2 also it's a very good cartridge. The Elise 2 is. I'll talk about it later maybe. Very good cartridge. Still has an elliptical point. The Exact has a fancy vital stylus point, and Rega's own documentation will tell you that. The Carbon, however, when you look at the stylus point, it just says user replaceable, which leads me to believe that it's actually a very cheap conical shaped stylus, which was, pretty much, went out with the arc in the 70s. So I would just avoid it like the plague, really. Needs a higher tracking weight than the elliptical styli, and basically, it's just they're just grot, really. They won't trace the groove well enough to bring out the detail in your records. Whereas the Bias 2, although it's not the best cartridge in the world, it will make a pretty decent fist of it in the context of one of these two turntables. Okay, the Planner 1 and the Planner 2. Now, in terms of amplification for that, Rega's, you see, they don't really make a budget-conscious alternative other than the Rega Brio. Now, the Rega Brio costs twice the price of the Planner 1 with the carbon cartridge. And that, to me, doesn't make sound financial sense. You don't really want to be spending more on amplification than you are on your source component, regardless of whatever the source is, even a CD player. Although you can just about get away with it on a CD player, but really not with a turntable at all, not with good old-fashioned hi-fi. So I found this Marantz PM505 for £165. Pair that, it's got a phono stage built in. Okay, so a record player, it's perfectly safe to plug into that directly without the need for a separate phono stage. Pair that with a pair of stand mount mission speakers on stands. Don't skimp on stands, please. Don't put them on the floor or on top of a piece of furniture. It just won't, they'll just sound terrible. But put them on stands with that Marantz amp and the P1 or 2 with a bias cartridge, and you'll have hi-fi heaven for relatively not much money. Okay. Sadly, good hi-fi is expensive. Both of these turntables do hi-fi just enough for you to know that you're listening to a good hi-fi record player. Okay, particularly with the Bias 2 cartridge on it. Okay. If you put them with the Brio, even using the Brio's built-in phono stage, I think you'll find, particularly if you've got a CD player and you're playing CDs as well, you'll probably find your records don't sound as good as your CDs, and you'll be thinking, oh yeah, I reckon that, you know, the record deck is not doing enough to show how good that amplification is. That's my theory behind that. Okay. So really, where things start getting serious is this Planner 3 turntable. Okay. Again, in terms of hi-fi, it's a lower mid-range deck. It's still expensive. There's just no getting away from it. You know, good hi-fi is expensive. Okay, that the Planner 3 is about £500. It's about 600 or something if you buy it with the Elex 2 cartridge, but it's cheaper to get it fitted with the Elex 2 cartridge than to buy the two separately. They do a little deal on it to make the cartridge just a little bit cheaper. Okay, but the Planner 3 would be a fantastic match with Rega's base spec Brio amplifier. The Brio amplifier has its own built-in phono stage, and because it's Rega's reputation, they actually make the phono stages very good in their amplifiers, and you could probably get away with that. In fact, I did for many years. I had the an older generation version of this turntable, just called the P3, with the Elex 2 cartridge, i.e. that blue one that's fitted on there, and it was just, you know, in the context of my system, it was really like being rubbed down with a velvet glove or being wrapped in a cozy blanket drinking hot chocolate. It was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. So so you know, you could do an awful lot worse than get that turntable plugged into a Brio. Fantastic. Okay, now the the thing about cartridges, which is why they need a phono stage, is that there are two reasons. The first reason number one, is that records are not cut with the treble and bass balance as they should be on you know, if you were just listening to it direct from maybe the master tape or something like that. What they do is they cut the bass and boost the treble so that they can make the grooves slightly bigger for the treble grooves and slightly smaller for the bass grooves. And the amplifier, courtesy of the phono stage, which, as I say, is built into a Rega Brio amplifier, and nowadays more and more phone amplifiers have phono stages, but that corrects that treble and bass balance, just makes it flat, as it were, as it was originally intended to be. And the other reason number two, is that the signal from a cartridge is not strong enough to just be plugged into an ordinary line level socket. Even though they look the same, there's still the same style socket and plug as plugging in your CD player or a radio or something into an amplifier, but you must have one that is labelled phono. If you don't have one that is labelled phono, then you need a phono stage. Let's have a look at Rega's range of phono stages, shall we? Now, this is the Phono Mini A2D. It's a moving magnet phono stage, the cheapest cartridges, by the way, and you can get some extremely good ones. Rega's, you know, all the way up to Rega's Exact and the Goldring 1042, which is even better. Moving magnet cartridge. You can get some extremely good ones. Ortofon's 2M Black is a superb moving magnet cartridge, and also will cost you as much as a P3. So again, use care. You don't want to spend more on your cartridge than you do on your deck. The Elise, I think it's about £150, something like that, to go with the P3. It's again slightly cheaper if you buy the two together. But this Phono Mini thing here is about £89, I think it is, and I think it's also got a USB socket. I'm not entirely sure. I should really look it up, but I can't be bothered. But yeah, use that if you've got a very, very cheap turntable, such as a P1 or a P2, and an amplifier that is cheap but has no phono stage. That's the only circumstances that I would use that, even though it'll be good for the money, and you know it'll be well built. You know, it's a Rega, for goodness sake, so it'll do the job, it'll do the biz, but only for something very cheap. Okay, now we have these two here, the Phono MM and the Phono MC. Now the Phono MM, I would say use with a slightly more expensive amplifier. It's £198 this is, so you probably not more than about £600 on the amplifier, about a third of the price on your phono stage as your amplifier. You don't want to go more than that, but use it for an amplifier again that hasn't got a phono stage, because I think that the phono stages, certainly for Rega's turntables, I think that the phono stages, even in the Brio, which is the lowest of the Rega amps, is at least as good as that Phono MM. Okay. If you want to use a moving coil cartridge, you must have a separate phono stage, and it has to be a specific moving coil phono stage. Moving coil phono stages boost the signal even more than a moving magnet, because although they're better quality sound wise, the output from a moving coil cartridge is tiny. It really is even tinier than a moving magnet output. Okay, so you need to plug it into something that's going to boost that signal even more, so that that can then boost your so that can then be amplified by your amplifier and, you know, into your speakers. Okay, you just will not get good results at all if you plug it into a moving magnet phono stage. Okay, and whilst we're talking about plugging things in, if you do use a separate phono stage, perhaps to upgrade an amplifier, okay, this Aria Phono Stage, for example, will upgrade the moving magnet input on any of Rega's amplifiers or any cheaper amplifier, but don't plug it into the phono socket. Plug it into a line socket, such as perhaps you're not using the one that's labelled for the radio or the tuner, or an aux socket, for example. So you know, be careful. Okay, you plug it into a line level socket. Okay, regardless of. Okay, yeah. So this Phono MC is actually quite a new thing. Okay, it's £248, so it's slightly more expensive than the moving magnet one. But then again, for it to be worth its salt, any moving coil cartridge should cost you a lot more than a moving magnet cartridge of like for like, of similar. Okay, you can get some very, very cheap as chips moving coils, and I'll be shot for saying it, but there's a Denon moving coil cartridge, which, as I say, yeah, it's about £100 or something like that, and it really is nasty. It really is nasty. Just don't. Okay, same as the carbon. Just don't. Okay. Okay, there is, you know, there is no budgetary argument for spending £100 on a Denon DL103, because you can get a much better moving magnet cartridge for the same price. So yeah, I mean, that Elise 2, gorgeous moving magnet cartridge, absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so yeah, we've got this Phono moving coil cartridge phono stage here. Now you see, I used to have a Creek OBH 15 phono stage, which did prove to be an upgrade over my Mira 3 amplifier. It was about £250, and it'll be more now because it was about 10 years ago or something that I had it, or that I bought it. And it had a moving magnet phono stage, which was extremely good. And I used it with my Goldring 1042. Now look on my YouTube channel, you'll find umpteen demonstrations of it. It really was fantastic. It really got to the heart of the music. Whereas the Mira 3, again, with the 1042 cartridge, very precise sounding, very detailed and whatever, but plugging it into the phono stage beefed up the sound, really sort of got it by the collar, and you know, it was textured, it was correctly balanced, no kind of, because the Creek is a very neutral phono stage, and yeah, it really boogied and jived, yeah, okay, and it did upgrade my Mira 3 amplifier. Again, the Mira 3 is no longer made by Rega anymore, sadly. It was a brilliant amplifier. I've now got an Elex-R amplifier, which is Rega's mid-range amplifier, and it is superb, absolutely superb. But yeah, coming back to this Creek phono stage, it also had a moving magnet setting. And it was a setting, it was a switch that basically switched all the components from doing the job that a moving magnet phono stage has to do to switching them to do the job that a moving coil has to do. And it was the same circuitry, okay? And basically, you know, it was for, you know, I would say it was a good moving magnet phono stage. It was... it will do the job a bit like the Phono Mini here for a moving magnet cartridge. It would just be a stopgap, I think, for a moving coil cartridge. Sound okay, but wouldn't really be telling you what that moving coil cartridge is capable of. Okay, so again, you know, you have to be careful. The Phono MC is a completely different thing. It is just a moving coil phono stage, okay? Unlike the Creek, the Phono MC also has, for its £248, which is quite lowly, but it's the same price as a P1, so, you know, don't use it with a P1. They actually give you a lot. Okay, it's got on the back, it's got dip switches so that you can play around with the loading settings. If you have a Rega cartridge, a Rega moving coil, such as an Ania or a Feta 2, although I don't use an Feta 2 with it, it's not good enough for an Feta 2, but let's say an Ania, then it will come set up. The dip switches on the back will be set up to work with that Ania cartridge. But if you've got a different moving coil cartridge with slightly different electrical characteristics, slightly different impedance and whatnot, then you can use the settings on the back to change it to match. Whereas the OBH15 didn't have anything like that. Okay, so this is the Phono MC. What I'm saying basically is that it's a serious moving coil cartridge for mid-range moving coil cartridges. I didn't quite say that right, but never mind, you know what I mean. So, going back to the turntables, again, I would say don't use a Planner 3 with a moving coil cartridge. Certainly don't use it with the Ania, although Rega recommend it and say, yeah, you can. I just think that the Ania, being the same price as the Planner 3, it just doesn't make sound financial sense. In my sort of budgetary planning and stuff, I'd say no more than 2/3 of the price of your record player for a cartridge, really. Okay, a third of the budget might be pushing it slightly. I mean, you could get away with using an exact, I think, which is a moving magnet. It's the top moving magnet on the Planner 3. It would sound much better on the Planner 6 or RP6, but yeah, I think you could get away with it on that. Again, you see, you know, I'm not sure whether the Phono MM would upgrade a Brio amplifier, but or even any of Rega's amplifiers. So, yeah, you know, use it as they suggest with that at least 2 cartridge plugged into a Brio amplifier. The Planner 6 or the RP6, because they're pretty much very, very similar turntables, even though the Planner 6 is slightly better because it's been revamped. But yeah, again, you know, a Brio will sound fine with it, but I think an Elex-R with that and an exact cartridge moving magnet, or use an Aria with the Phono MC. Okay, with the RP8, I wouldn't use the Phono MC. What I would use is the Aria Phono Stage. The Aria Phono Stage has got a moving magnet setting. However, it has 2 different inputs because it's essentially 2 phono stages in one box. Not like the OBH15, whereby it's the same circuitry regardless, but switched to MM, it will amplify a cartridge by so much. Switch to MC and it will amplify a moving coil cartridge. You need to plug it into the moving coil socket on here, and you also, again, you've got the dip switches on the back. It has separate left and right circuitry, so you've got separate dip switches for left and right channels, but they all come set up, you know, brilliantly for Rega's own moving coil cartridges. Okay, I'd say the Aria cartridge is probably, I wouldn't want to go any lower with a moving coil cartridge than an Aria, and believe it or not, you can, but I wouldn't want to go any lower than an Aria with a moving coil cartridge anyway, regardless of other equipment. You just don't, you know, as I say, get a decent moving magnet instead. Okay, now this Aria Phono Stage is also a complementary component, as it were, for Rega's RP10 turntable, which I wouldn't say is good enough, particularly with the Aphelion cartridge. That's, you're talking 7 grand's worth of turntable and cartridge there, and no, not an Aria. You can go to something really sophisticated if you can afford to buy an RP10 with an Aphelion cartridge and spend 7 grand on it. You can afford better amplification than that. Okay, I'd say that something like, you know, Rega do make good amplification. The Osiris amplifier is fantastic. Doesn't have a phono stage, so you need to get one. The Elex-R is cheaper. And is still an extremely good amplifier with a phono stage, but with an RP10, just don't get a separate phono stage and use a decent cartridge with it, such as the Aphelion, which it's matched for perfectly. And you know, having read the reviews and read around, it really is the, you know, it really is the biz. You know, that there's very, very little to beat that combination, you know, at whatever price of turntable. Okay, so now having a look then back to this Rega Aria cartridge here. Okay, because while we're talking about reading the reviews and things, there's an article here for Hi-Fi Choice. Now, Hi-Fi Choice, I don't mind Hi-Fi Choice magazine actually. It's a good magazine. They cater for, you know, a good range of hi-fi enthusiasts, from poor ones to very rich ones. But this link here takes you to the Aria and the Phono MC review, because quite often the Aria and Phono Stage and the Phono MC, i.e. the cheaper of the two moving coil phono cartridges that Phono Stages that Rega do, reviewed together as a package for an RP8 is the usual system that I've seen it reviewed on. But this one here, this Hi-Fi Choice thing here, implies that the Aria Phono Stage, which is the better of the two phono stages, the one with the moving magnet and the moving coil, will not work with the Aria. In fact, let's get the actual words. The Aria is in keeping, see, with an output of 0.4 millivolts, the Aria is in keeping with other moving coil cartridges and should work with a variety of MC phono stages without issue. In Rega's case, however, the Aria is not a perfect fit for its existing phono stage, as its more affordable units are moving magnet designs, whilst its MC-capable Aria offering is designed to partner the Afeta 2 cartridge. To solve this, the Aria is joined by the Phono MC. That is a load of rubbish. That really is a load of rubbish. And this person, what's his name? Ed Selly, you should be slapped on the wrist for that. Sorry. Non-violently, of course. But you should be, because that's not true. That's absolutely not true. There's nothing about the electrical characteristics of an Aria that make it any different from an Afeta 2 or an Aphelion. And they'll work with the Aria Phono Stage. In fact, Rega even put it as a complementary component to the Aria Phono Stage. So that's absolute rubbish. Okay, if you've got an Aria Phono Stage, you do not need to ditch it to use the Aria cartridge. Okay, I am going to stop there. Okay, I might just sum up ever so slightly, but basically I'm going to stop because I'm twattering on here. Right, quickly sum up. Planner 1, Planner 2. Use a very cheap amplifier. If you haven't got a phono stage on your amplifier, then use that phono mini USB thing. A Planner 3, use a Brio amplifier, and you'll probably find that the phono stage on that is good enough. I doubt whether or not the phono MM will upgrade it. If you want to use a phono MM, use it with a different amplifier that's more expensive, that hasn't got a phono stage. Okay, Planner 6 and RP6. If you're going to use a moving coil cartridge with that, then with either of those, in fact, any of these three really. No, hold on. Planner 6 and RP6. If you're going to use a moving coil cartridge, use the Phono MC if you haven't already got a moving coil phono stage, or you don't think that your moving coil phono stage is good enough, like my OBH15 wouldn't have. I don't think it would cut the mustard with an Aria. But yeah, use the phono with that. With the RP8, use the Aria Phono Stage. With an RP10, get something better. With an RP78, don't even bother. Okay? Okay, and I will leave you there. Okay, bye-bye.